Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank with Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo. North Dakota State set for the 19th renewal of the Dakota Marker Series with South Dakota State 1 versus 2 for the first time in the history of the Fargo Dome. We'll have the top two ranked teams playing in the regular season. Only the second time ever that's happened in the history of the subdivision of the regular season. You have to go back 30 years for the last time it happened during the regular season. We have some news to share right off the hop as we start, Jeffrey, with another tight end. John Stiegelmeier, head coach of South Dakota State, was just on hot mic with me before we recorded this. We asked him about Tucker Kraft, and he said that Kraft is going to warm up, and if he gives the thumbs up sign, that he's going to go on Saturday.
I think Vegas is going to receive this news with another point or two or three toward South Dakota State. I think he's worth that much if he's effective enough. My question was, and Stiegelmeier answered on your show, was, is he healthy enough? And he said doctors say he can't hurt it any worse. I'm not sure how that is with a high ankle sprain, but I'm not a doctor. and he said at 80 or 90%, he's better than almost anybody else, which is true.
There's no doubt about that. He is a load. He got hurt the first game of the season. I think it was the second series of the season when the Jackrabbits lost at Iowa. He had numerous NIL offers to transfer to go play somewhere else. He may be in the consideration 2 or 3 of the top FCS prospects to get drafted at the end of the season. Something you and I have been talking about with Noah Gindorf. Kraft falls right in there about the potential to come back, and clearly, Jeff, he wants to come back to play.
Another kick in the gut, I think, for NDSU this season. In their NFL prospect tight end, Noah Gindorf, did not make it through, and the Jacks for this game are getting their stud back. That's just, again, another, you just can't overcome these switches and changes in personnel. It just doesn't work.
Kraft's a load. 6 touchdowns last year, nearly 800 yards receiving. The Stiegelmeier told me, he says there's hears it all the time, of comparable comparisons to Dallas Goedert, who, Jeff, I don't need to tell you, in the matchups against the Bison, Goedert was unstoppable. And the Jackrabbits won 2 of those games, the 2 marker games in 16 and 17, because they could not match up with him.
Nope. And how do you? And here's the other thing, too, with NDSU. How do you match up with them? The best bet is Cole Wisniewski, and he hasn't played this year yet. So, again, another personnel grouping that is not lining up in the home team's favor.
I will say this. This is here speculation run rampant, okay? I saw Wisniewski Tuesday when we were up at the Fargo Dome heading into meetings. No boot, no nothing. I had not seen that all season on the meetings part. So that must mean he's getting close. You're not sitting in meetings if you're not getting close to playing. I'm not saying he's playing Saturday. Just saying the road is...
Well, that would help.
At least fair. There's no doubt.
That would help. NDSU is not really, they've been average at linebacker this year. And just, average, better than most FCS teams, I think.
Average for North Dakota State.
But average for NDSU. They've been average on the defensive line. Better than most teams across the country. That's why you're number 1, and you're 4-1 overall, right? 5-1, I'm sorry. 5-1 overall. You're still winning games. But it hasn't been clean. It hasn't been the dominant performance that we've seen over the years, and really to maintain domination is pretty tough to do. And defensive tackle and nose guard is the toughest position.
You hammered this
to
for years.
Players.
You hammered this for years, and you're dead on. The Bison are finding that out right now with youth there. Jackson Duteneffer and Cody Heisman are redshirt freshmen that are playing and are going to ask to play a lot on Saturday.
Your best guy got hurt, Eli Mostert. Your All-American candidate at one of the toughest positions got hurt.
Correct.
Again, another deficient personnel matchup for NDSU that over the course of this season has not favored them well, especially against South Dakota State.
I want to talk first, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this on the Jackrabbits, just the Bison, second time in 3 weeks with 3 turnovers. They had 6 in the last 3 games. The Jackrabbits have 6 all season. And if you're not playing Indiana State or South Dakota, you're not winning those football games. I don't care who you're playing.
No,
you're not winning that game.
It's common sense. Again, we spent the first part talking about the defense, and the offense is not exactly burning it up either. I mean, 31 points against Indiana State after 3 turnovers.
Yeah, they had 500-some-odd yards of offense. I would say the Bison offense is okay. I think they're in better shape. But they got to hang on to the ball, Jeff. That's the point. Dom Ganella fumbled twice. He didn't see the field again. I don't know how much he plays on Saturday if he's still in the doghouse. But, I mean, I asked Matt Entz about this on Monday at his press conference, if they're stretching out for yards. Like, what? It comes in bunches, and that's what happened here with the Bison because it happened against South Dakota the same way where they couldn't hang on to the ball.
Well, it's almost reverse in how you can attack South Dakota State. You keep your defense off the field, right?
Right.
So with offense, you got to control the ball. And the best way to keep the ball out of Tucker Kraft's hands and Gronowski and Isaiah Davis is for them to be standing on the sideline.
Yep.
And so this kind of comes down to, we've heard all about the NDSU offensive line now this year, and Cody Malk's an All-American, and I've seen where Jake Kubas is getting
really good.
notes of being one of the best at his position.
Mason Miller's been really good at the right tackle spot.
Yep, and you got Westberg and Sundell, either one at center. Nash Jensen is a six-year senior. This is their game. I mean, this is where they have to shine, and they have to be really good. And the running backs have to be really good, and the running backs have to hang on to the ball. And Cam Miller's got to be good on third down.
And hang on to the ball himself. He turned it over 3 times in this game last year. That's a huge deal.
And just not feel the weight of the world on their shoulders either. And you got to balance that. You got to go out and play free and easy, and you have to play to win. And you can't play not to lose.
And SDSU, I got a feeling, is going to come in, breezy like that they are.
Are they?
I would think. I mean, they've played. I know the Jackrabbit fans aren't thrilled of how they've played, but they've played a lot cleaner than North Dakota State has played through the first 6 games of the season. I haven't watched every game. I've watched 3 Jackrabbit games. I watched the Iowa game, which was a slog, Missouri State, where they played unreal defensively, and I watched last week against South Dakota. I would say that they are cleaner than what the Bison have looked in the first 6 games. No question,
cleaner, absolutely, just by statistics alone. Gronowski hurt the Bison with his legs the last time he faced him in 2021. Hasn't hurt anybody with his legs this year, but he never did in the previous games leading up to that spring game either.
So I asked Stig exactly that question about him running, which said, well, we've run him every game. We're going to do it again. He's not as fast, he said, since the injury. He's bigger because he's added some more weight, but he said he's not as fast as he was when the Bison saw him in the spring of 2021. Something to watch.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah.
Just looking at him, it seems like it. He looked fast to me in 21.
He was.
He was running away from guys.
Yeah, and he did that numerous times against the Bison in the spring game. All of that said, I think the biggest thing how SDSU has now gotten to this level is their defensive line. That is where NDSU has been able to manhandle them. You'll remember that playoff game in 2018. Easton Stick was running free. Bruce Anderson running free. The Jackrabbits with Winkleman and Sanders up front, man, they're
rotating 7, 8 guys.
And he said we copied that from what we saw what NDSU started doing 10 years ago at that spot.
Took him a while, but
took him a while to find the guys to do that, to be able to do that.
NDSU is just in the wrong rotation of losing too many guys from last year, too many guys being hurt, meaning Cava and Eli Mostart, and having to rely on young guys. Could they have, I was asked this yesterday, could they have reached into the transfer portal in the offseason? I guess why would you if you're depending on...
If you know what you got there and you're excited about the potential to that spot, which I know they were, that's probably why they didn't do that. Maybe they did, and there was a guy that ended up going somewhere else. We don't know.
Yeah, could have been, but it just appears to me that the development of the younger guys is taking a little longer than maybe they had hoped.
I think Will Mostart has come along well, and obviously had a sack in the blocked field goal last week, so he's trying to, I'm not say take the spot of what his brother was doing, but I think Will has played well. Javier Darrett's a guy we have not heard enough from. We have not heard enough for number 58, and that is a guy I know they were counting on, and it's just not been consistent enough for him.
He hasn't done what Costner Ching and Lane Tucker and Brad or Michael Buto did last year. That just caused problems in the middle. I just me too. Yeah. I share the same opinion. Just have not seen enough of that, and I think the coaches have reflected that in their assessment and being honest and saying sometimes they look okay and pretty good, and other times not listening.
And not that good. which is what we saw in spades in both Vermilion and in Terrell, and frankly in the second half against Youngstown. Because the first half they played lights out, and the second half was kind of bleh, and they let Youngstown get back in that game.
McLaughlin got some yards.
Then you can't do that against an opponent like this. South Dakota State has excellent quarterback. Isaiah Davis is good. He's not Pierre Strong good. I think we need to make that known. Strong was drafted in the 4th round of the NFL, and Davis burst on the scene in the spring. You remember, Jeff, he had 3 touchdowns in the national championship game.
But if you're not getting a hand on Isaiah Davis until 4 yards into the secondary, then you're in trouble because he's got that downhill ability. He can't make people miss like Pierre Strong could. Pierre Strong just had that instinct right at the line and could bulldoze for 3-5 yards and maybe turn that into a decent gainer after that. I don't see that in Isaiah Davis. I think he needs a little more head of steam. I think if you can bottle him up, he's a big guy.
Yep.
I think if you can bottle him up and do some gang tackling on him, I don't think he's going to hurt you.
And then you throw in, if Kraft's there, and pair him up with the Yankee twins. Canyon Bauer has been really good on the outside too. That's pretty formidable for what the Bison defense has to go with. Their secondary has been outstanding. Bison secondary, though, needs to make a play. They've had 4 balls hit him in the chest or the hands and not come up with the interception. They can't have that happen Saturday. If the opportunity is there, they have to make a play.
How do you coach that? Just make the play, dude.
Catch the ball.
Catch the ball.
I mean, Oscar Benson's one was right here, and it hit him right in the right between the 4 and the 2. I mean, you've got to make that play. The Eubanks one is a tough one. He's dying for his first career interception. Hasn't had it. Tutsi won against Youngstown. Those are ones that sustain drives. The Benson one got dropped. Indiana State scored a touchdown after that.
And not only that, they just turn a game around.
Yeah.
And especially with the long return, it just changes the whole complexion of a game.
It can either inflate or deflate. Inflate, obviously, if you make the play and change momentum, or deflate.
Also,
we could have had that.
And
now we're still on the field. And then, bam, I mean, I maybe I'm making too much of that, but I think to that point against this particular team, you can't have those kind of, I don't even know if they're unforced errors, Jeff. In tennis, you get that. That might be the best way to describe it, but it seems like that to me, that there are plays out there, they're just not being made. And that goes to what Matt Entz was talking about on Monday during his press conference, I think, on where they're at with some things.
I think he's been honest in his assessment of his team. I don't think there's been any, like, looking at him like, I think you're just kind of pulling over on us. I haven't detected that at all.
And I look at the Jackrabbit linebackers are better too. Bach is a stud in the middle. Stahlberg's really good on the outside as well. But those are going to be dudes that somehow the Bison wide receivers, Joe Stuffle, going to have to try and get open on Saturday.
They're better at positions, especially defensively, than NDSU's almost always been better.
So you do your checklist, right, of the games. How many did SDSU get for this game on Saturday?
4. Right?
Where'd you give NDSU the advantage at?
Now you're testing my memory. Running back, because I think...
Okay, stable running backs the Bison have.
With Tamarick.
Yep.
Offensive line.
Yep.
Special teams, because South Dakota State struggled in the field goal game.
So SDSU's kicker is doing everything.
And secondary.
SDSU's punter is the same as his kicker and the kickoff. Hunter Dustman's doing all 3.
That's a lot to do. That's a lot to do.
Ben LeCompte did that one game for the Bison in 2015, and they retired after that. Secondary, So quarterback you gave to Gronowski?
He's 2-0 against NDSU.
1-0, but yeah, he didn't play the last week. Well, and Miller's 0-2. And Cam spoke to that he has not played. Granted, Cam got thrown in the spring when Zeb Nolan started and then was out after the first series. Miller didn't play.
I guess, he's won in this building, and then Miller's 0-2. Right.
I would say that Cam did not play great last year in Brookings. Remember that fumble early in the third quarter after the Bison, they're down 24-7 to start the third quarter. They get the ball, and then Cam fumbles, and then SDSU gets a field goal. Now it's 27-7.
And then defensive line and linebackers, certainly with South Dakota State.
I'm with you there. That's
receivers, too.
Zach Mathis, you wrote about, could be a factor in this game just because
of how Kraft back and the
I'm just saying for the Bison offense, not just for the check marks. But,
well, there's hope.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
That's something there because the Bison, Miller completed passes, I think, to 8 different guys on Saturday. So you saw it. Raja Nelson caught a couple. Lippy has been really good. Quietly, I think Lippy's had a really nice year. You have to find the end zone. Raja caught a couple balls. Stuffle did, Mathis did, that they're sharing it there. But I'll go back to the biggest thing to me in this game. Last year, we sat in Brookings after the game. Hunter Lipke didn't touch the ball. I don't know if he was hurt. We still really don't know what happened that game last year. That will not happen Saturday. Lipke will play and be a factor. The other guy who wasn't a factor was Tamarick Williams because he hadn't, and he is going to be a factor. That's got to be something for the Bison sales, Jeff, on Saturday.
So who did handle? I'm trying to think.
It was Ganella.
Ganella and Kobe.
Yep, that was it. Much different in the running back game. Let me get the stats real quick. But Lipke, remember, didn't touch the ball. Williams got a few carries, but not a ton. He became the workhorse the following week at Youngstown State. Here's the individual stats. Cam carried it 13 times for 59 yards. Tamarick had it 12 times for 54. Ganella 6. Christian carried it once on a sweep, and then Kobe had 4 carries for 3 yards. Lipke had no carries in the game last year. That is obviously going to change what's going to happen on Saturday, and that's the biggest X factor to me is that we just didn't see that. And Tamarick, boy, he ran so hard last week. 13 carries for $145 and 3 touchdowns and looked explosive in those runs.
It's what they're going to need. Boy, this is going to be a physical. This is a man's game. This is going to be a total man's game on Saturday. I don't see these teams going downfield a whole lot. I don't think South Dakota State can do it
like
on
air
SDSU.
It out, you mean, kind of thing?
I just don't see that. And the Bison just haven't shown that they can go long this season.
By the way, Davis didn't play in this game. Remember, he got hurt in the first game last season. He came back after this game, I want to say, that he missed a majority of the season, much like Kraft has done for South Dakota State. So a couple of guys that we're talking about a lot that just weren't factors in the game last year, Lipke and Davis, and they could be the studs of the game on Saturday. It's really interesting to me.
Who can emerge, right?
Lipke had a quiet 70-some-odd yards last week. Didn't it feel that way in the game last week at Indiana State?
Yeah. Nothing, there's no 15, 20-yarder where you went, wow, that's...
Because people are tweeting me, like, what's the matter? Is Lipke hurt? I'm like, no, Lipke has like 60-some-odd yards. He just hasn't broke.
He looked good.
Right?
It wasn't great. Yeah, it was good.
And the touchdowns.
Nothing wrong with good.
Yeah, that's the part that's remarkable to me. I know I do this yearly, so for our diehard listeners, they may roll their eyes at me, but this rivalry, Kolpack, you've seen it blossom to what it is, and I've seen it for the last 16 years take on a whole new life. It's just to have it come to now where it was such a created trophy to now it's become, Stig said it, and I agree with him, it's the best rivalry in the division, and now it's 1 versus 2 that comes up on Saturday.
That automatically makes it a great rivalry when you have the 2 state schools, the state university schools, going 1-2, and they both over the last 10, 15 years have consistently been really good. Give South Dakota State credit for improving their program the way it did because they were not good in Division II.
No.
It just was a sort of afterthought. Okay, here come the Jacks. They play in this crappy stadium in Brookings, South Dakota, kind of a crappy town. Just 500 all the time, 6-5,
5-6,
7-4, 4-7, 5-6.
Yep.
Just lived in 500 land forever and ever and ever. And that, and meanwhile, NDSU and UND are duking it out. They've been duking it out since the late 60s. And all of a sudden, the Division I thing changed. It changed it all. It changed it all because both programs invested heavily into their football.
And SDSU took the lead on NDSU with the indoor facility. That's been around for, 7 years?
Since 14.
Yeah, 8 years that the Jacks have had it. And now here it is, as people are listening to this, maybe on Friday, North Dakota State will open its indoor today or tomorrow, or whatever you're listening to it. And finally, the Bison, 8 years later, have caught up to South Dakota State.
The indoor's better than South Dakota. South Dakota State, I think it's an 80-yard field and has a track around it.
It has a track around it. That is not the case for the Bison one. We're going to get our first look at it.
This is all football all the time.
Other sports are going to get in there, but this is a
it's called the football performance complex.
Yeah, it has a football facility on the outside of it. This is, and you can't underestimate it. Stig said it to us on Bison Game Day last year. The biggest game changer for his program was that facility. And what can this do for
Because
NDSU
it's all year
now?
round. Because it's all year round. It's something you can use every day of the year. It's something that, and wait till the other stuff's done in the spring, the phase 2, which there's ongoing construction.
Yeah. Going to be changing there.
The only thing left for the Bison football program is NIL. NIL, some sort of NIL program. It's a reality.
It's even more reality when you're seeing some other FCS teams leave the division, as we're going to hear Kennesaw State announce likely today or tomorrow.
I hear South Dakota and Illinois State starting their NIL programs. I question how much is invested in those.
So we talked with David Herbster about this. South Dakota and NDSU might be the only ones that do full cost of attendance for everything.
Right.
South Dakota State does not do it for all of its sports. That's why they have more NIL than North Dakota State. NDSU and USD, and I think UND now, are the only ones that do it for everything. All sports.
You forget about cost of attendance with NIL, don't you?
It got totally swept
by the way,
away.
Here's another $3,800 on top of your full scholarship.
It totally gets lost away.
Now they need to add NIL?
Yep. Yes, they do. The answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
The answer is that a resounding
stupid question.
Yes.
I meant it to be a stupid rhetorical question.
The answer is yes by a landslide on that. I am interested to get a look at inside the new facility because it's as much as the bubble served its purpose. This is, like Jeff mentioned, year-round, anytime, any day. Get in there. And how often will the Bison practice in the Fargo Dome ever again? You know what I mean?
Like, you still need to practice in your home field.
Occasionally, though, I bet you it won't be a whole lot. You know, I mean, the days of trying to schedule around monster trucks or the boat show, that is long gone. And you remember, and Gazer tells the story all the time about going outside at Dakota Field when it's December. They could still do that, but now the luxury of being inside is completely different.
It's my game day feature story. If you could, at all possible, pick up the game day section on Saturday morning, one of the 2 days of the printed paper, and you can also access it online, that this is boom time in NDSU athletics for facilities because the outdoor track just recently finished, renovated, and overhauled. The design phase, I believe, is getting toward the end in the softball hitting facility that'll go by the Therrelton Park. Renovations are almost complete. I think they have a little bit to do on the soccer stadium, the old Dakota Field.
Yep.
What am I missing here?
The shack is
golf. And you have the indoor stuff upstairs in the shack.
Track, the brand new track that's down. That. Okay, the track is all good to go there.
And this is after the indoor track. So I don't know what's left. So in the master plan, they're in the late stages of really finishing, and you're never really done.
No,
right?
you're
never done.
You're always
ask Jack Mon. Hey, look,
we will on Saturday.
He'll be our guest on the pregame show. Hey, you done?
And I know
done with your job?
I know the answer is it's going to be a quick retort on that. So here we are. I know you're going to take umbrage with me about my commentary, and probably have about this as the biggest game in the history of the Dome.
I'm saving it for the pregame show, but I'll just say it's not.
That's it?
I don't
give me something here.
Dom, they've had how many playoff games? And
that's a big one.
And semi. You think?
Yeah.
You don't think Georgia Southern?
It was pretty good.
You think this is bigger than the Georgia Southern game?
Yes.
Oh, for God's sake.
For what's at stake? Yes.
What do you mean what's at stake? A number one seed.
Everything's at stake. Conference title, the whole, everything. And I know what you'd say. Well, it's a trip to Frisco. Yep, I got you. But never has had this kind of impact. And by the way, those last couple games, the James Madison semifinal game, SDSU in the summit, those weren't sellouts, Kolpack. This is a sellout. So somebody thinks it's important. That's my only point. That's my point.
Well, you get another 1,000 Jackrabbit fans. That's why it's a sellout.
Why were the Bison fans for go to Frisco then in December of 2017?
Because they already had their tickets there, and I don't know.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm not talking about last year. You said the biggest game ever.
Well, that goes into account. If you want to throw those games at me, I'm just telling you. The Georgia Southern game in 2012 is I would say absolutely. It's right there.
I would counter with 11. You beat the standard of the programs.
Yeah, Georgia Southern 2012 was pretty good. I think they have more people in the building for that one, and it was louder.
I'm just saying in 2011, the first time.
The Northern Iowa game in 2011 you could put there. I'd argue that one too. So let's do some picks here before we go. It's a really, what's the right word? Kind of blah weekend in the FCS outside of the game in Fargo. I don't know if you looked at some of the other games around the country on Saturday where in the FBS there's a couple of good games. Other than that, not great. South Dakota, Illinois State. I don't know what to make of. Illinois State got a big win on Saturday.
Winning at Northern Iowa. South Dakota, I think, is in its, I'm sorry to say, but in its last year of the Bob Nielsen.
Wow. Are you going to go there?
I think so.
Okay.
Look at the move he made earlier in the year, taking over offensive play calling duties. They invested way too much. I just don't see that continuing.
Interesting.
I like the guy a lot, but
like Bob too.
I don't see.
Wow. They're 1-4 right now.
Yep.
And likely, this is a toss-up game. Last year in this game, USD was a heavy favorite. Illinois State went to Vermilion and won. So you could see USD going to Bloomington.
They got handled last week to South Dakota State.
Jackrabbits
just manhandled.
Destroyed them. Western Illinois at Southern Illinois. SIU's got a real shot here to win, I think, 7 in a row by the time they play the Bison. That's a complete
and they have them at home.
Flip-flop of their season after losing the first 2. And now a chance for
really
win number 5 here.
In a dominant, they just got handled. It was weird.
And then they kicked the crap out of Missouri State last week. They just dominated. That game was
Beat
not
Northwestern.
as close. It was 38-21. That's not as close as that game was last week.
Beat a Big Ten team, Northwestern.
And they handled UND. I'm looking at, here's the next 3 weeks they have. Home for Western, at Vermilion, home for Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa game will be tricky. Then a bye. And then the Bison, Kolpack.
So the Bison will have played 3 opponents this year who have a bye before them.
Righto. NDSU's dined out on the bye weeks over the last decade, but that is certainly the case here in 2022.
Not in your favor.
So I got to imagine SIU's going to win that game. Western Illinois is in rough shape right now. I think that Southern would be a heavy favorite to take care of that game. Other than that, the Big Sky, nothing great that stands out there. So, I mean, I'm going to save our picks for Bison game day. I mean, Sacramento State, Eastern Washington.
Are we seeing the demise of Eastern Washington before our eyes? They're 1-4, right? Are they 1-4?
Correct.
They're 1-4. Have just the swag of Eastern Washington is not there anymore, in my opinion. The swag.
Yeah.
The offensive swag. They always had these dynamic receivers and Eric Bierre and
Cup obviously was there.
Vernon Adams.
Everybody.
Just all these players over the years. I'm not seeing that anymore.
Demise is a strong word. They're certainly on the downward turn here because Sac State seems like they're legit. I think it's maybe their time we'll see. They play Montana next week if they're ready to challenge the Grizz.
But it's Sac State and Eastern Washington this weekend.
Yes.
Sac State can put a huge issue into Eastern Washington's program.
No doubt. Who is more done, Missouri State or Northern Iowa? Each of them are 2-4.
Missouri State, in my opinion. I don't know how you can. I mean,
Bears have lost 4 in a row. Northern Iowa started 0-3.
But the Bears had a much more upside coming in.
No doubt about it.
People were talking about them
Jason
challenging for a national title.
Maybe the player of the year in the division. Jason Shelley.
They went from challenging for a national title to hoping to make the playoffs.
Well, they have. Is easy the right way to describe it? Probably not, but the last 5.
More manageable.
At Northern Iowa. So that's a toughie. They're off this week. They go to Northern Iowa next week. Then Western. At South Dakota, Youngstown, Indiana State. They get next week, you could see them getting hot, winning 5 in a row. You really could. But they've not shown anything the last 4 weeks to indicate that they could do that.
You just think that, okay, now they're going to turn it up. Now they've had the wake-up call.
The last 2 second halves, the second half in Grand Forks and the second half last week, it looks like they've quit. I'll just say it. It looks like they have given up.
And again, I go back. You get a lot of guys from the transfer portal. Maybe you don't have that cohesiveness that some teams have.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Real quick before we go, just atmosphere-wise, what do you expect on Saturday?
I expect one of the better ones in recent years, absolutely. And I think Bison fans, they all know, if they paid any attention, that I think they're the underdog in this game. I really do. I think Vegas is going to, it's even right now as we speak.
And the Kraft news may change that, like you said, off the top of the podcast here. That may sway it to SDSU.
To me, it's a no-brainer on who's favored. It's just South Dakota State's acting like the number 1 team this year, just by their defense.
how big is a turnover in this game? The Bison have yet to turn over the Jacks over the last 2 times they've played them. They have not forced a turnover in the last 2 times they've played.
Well, it's got to be mandatory for the Bison to win. Mandatory.
I agree. And NDSU's turned the ball over a couple of times against the Jackrabbits over the last 2 times. We will see you, everybody, on Saturday. Bison Game Day will get us started at 10 a.m. As Jeff mentioned, Jack Mon is going to join us inside the Dome on the massive opening of the indoor practice facility. Do you have a wing in there? Do you have something named after you in that building? I would imagine so.
You're a funny guy.
Come on now. You're that big a deal. You got to have something.
This is all about money, my friend. It's an investment in...
You're a big deal. You got some awards. Come on. Got to be something for Kolpack in there. Jack will join us on Bison Game Day along with Logan Campbell and Kyle Emanuel. And then, of course, the game that you'll see live on WDAY, the Farmers Union Insurance kickoff show, goes at 2:20. And then the game shortly after 2:30 between the Bison and the Jacks. Then myself, Jeff, and Mike will wrap things up on our post-game show on Inforum.com, which should be a great day inside. These days, they're so far and few between now with what's happened in FCS. I hope everybody embraces what Saturday is going to be. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Quality games in the FCS are, you're
far
right.
and few between
Yep,
now.
Yep, especially in the nationwide scope.
Well, you were watching Marshall in Louisiana last night. Is that something you aspire for?
I was impressed with Louisiana. I thought,
Sunbelt's not bad, man.
Coach Des, how do you say it? Taking over Billy Napier.
Desamore, yeah. Yep.
You like those Marshall helmets? Are you? What's
the black and green is not a common combo.
M on a black
like it,
helmet.
With a chrome
Jeez.
black helmet, man. That's a good look.
You're losing your taste.
By the way, SDSU, Kolpack, going all white. White helmets, white tops, white jerseys.
They've been common with that this year.
With the white helmets they debuted a few weeks ago. They're going to bring them to Fargo on Saturday. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. That's the latest Kolpack and Izzo podcast brought to you by Gate City Bank.